Hi, everyone. Welcome to FCC Clinic Discussion Forum. My name is Dr. Obi Osuchukwu, and I'll be discussing a topic that had been brought to my attention by so many of you because of the questions you've asked, and that's the question of domestic violence. I've received some questions that said, is domestic violence a psychological problem or social problem? My simple answer to it is both and much more. And so I would address this topic in three parts. And I will encourage you to listen to the three different parts because I don't want the video to be too long. I will split it into three parts. The first part being what really constitutes domestic violence, and two, what exactly are the causes or contributors of this kind of act. And the third part is what impact it has on the people or the players, um, and how do we manage it. So please take time, listen to these three parts. You could use it in family. It could be something that you use to have conversations. You could use it with your clients if you're a therapist or if you're a professional. You could use it in your group discussions. It's really important that people understand that domestic violence is not as simple as people have made it to be. It hasn't actually received the kind of attention that it requires, and so a lot of people suffer. Some pay dearly, fatally, with their lives. That's because either we're aware of it and we look away, or we don't really know what to do when we realize that it's actually happening. So, the very first thing I want to do is to discuss what is domestic violence. Now, by definition, domestic violence is seen as the act of physical, sexual, psychological, economic violence that is committed by a family member or an intimate partner. So it could be physical, which is most of the time what people are aware of because you get black eye, you get bruises, and there's some signs of it physically. You can see somebody's going through domestic violence. That is the one that's common and most people are aware of. But there are other kinds of domestic violence which often are not that obvious. That is actually the part that we as society need to pay particular attention because that's the one people go under the radar. They are suffering it, but they don't know how to voice it out. And the rest of the people who are with them, close proximity, don't even realize it's happening because there's no black eye. For example, psychological abuse, domestic abuse. The person is suffering, but it's not shown on their body. Economic abuse, sexual abuse, these are also not shown on the body. But if we have knowledge of what to expect, then we'll be able to throw more light on it. We'll be able to recognize it, identify it as early as possible so that such people can receive help. Now, when we look at domestic violence, often we talk about the victim or the perpetrator. In other words, in domestic violence, there are at least two principal players: the perpetrator, the person who is committing the act. Second, the victim, the recipient of the act of violence. But there's a third part that had been ignored for centuries, and that is the observers, or what I call secondary victims. Often, those observers, most of the time, are children. I call them observers or witnesses. they saw it, they experienced it secondary trauma, but often it's not spoken about. It's important we begin to talk about it. So when I discuss it in part 3, impacts, I'll go into a little bit details on that in the issues each person, each player likely to have. What problem the perpetrator is likely to be exhibiting, both psychologically, that's mental health, and socially. What the victim might be exhibiting, both psychologically and socially, and what the secondary victims or the witnesses or the observers are likely to exhibit as well. In the third part, I will discuss that. And so we will look at all these various parts of domestic violence. What is violence? Is that force one person instills on another without their consent. When a behavior, something that is unpleasant to the other person, the recipient, you, the giver, is forcefully giving someone else an act which they don't want to receive, but they receive it anyway. For example, when you verbally say things, label people, call people names, they don't want to take it, but they take it anyway, simply because it's forcefully given to them and they receive it not willingly, but because they have no option. That is violence. And it's domestic because it's happening within the home environment where the person is actually meant to be receiving some protection, some peace, safety. But the safety is violated. Safety is taken away because of this forceful energy within the family environment. So I will discuss the courses in my later video because I want to keep it short. Thank you for listening, and please listen to the next one of it because it's very important. You might pick one or two things to have as a discussion with your group members. Thank you once again and welcome to FCC Clinic Discussion Forum.